So good morning everyone. Today we will be discussing all about cell diversity, its function and its parts. But before that, let's first discuss what is cell. Now, if we try to look into the definition of cell into different books, it gives you a lot of definition. But simply, if we get the definition of what is cell, basically cell is the structural unit of life. Now, what do you think is the reason why is it that cell is basically the structural unit of life? It is because living and non-living organisms are actually made up of cell. Now, cell is also it is classified into two major groups. We have the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell. Now, cell is also formed by organelles or different organelles. Now, these organelles are actually little organs working together for the viability of the cell. And lastly, energy is being formed inside the cell into the process of photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and what is being formed is the adenosine triphosphate or the ATP. Now, it is here into our definition that cell is classified into two major groups, correct? Now let's define therefore or differentiate therefore what is prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. But before that, we should always take note that if we pertain into cell, we always remember life. Okay? Okay. So at this juncture of time, let's therefore differentiate what is prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. Now, for us to easily remember the difference between a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell, let's always remember Dora the Explorer. Okay? Why? Because they are actually, or they can be differentiated according to the structure and the size of the DNA. They are also, or they can be differentiated according to the presence of organelles. They can also be differentiated in terms of its reproduction, and they can also be differentiated according to its average size. Now, let's try to look into the DNA of the prokaryotic cell. Now, for the DNA of the prokaryotic cell, they are actually naked. Okay, what else? They are circular in structure. And what else? It doesn't have introns, or there is no introns into the DNA of our prokaryotic cell. Now, if we try to look into the eukaryotic cell, the DNA of the eukaryotic cell is actually bound into proteins. They are bound into proteins. What else? They are linear in its structure, and they usually have introns. Now, what do you think is the reason why is it that the DNA of the eukaryotic cell are bound into proteins? They are linear in its structure because we should always take note that eukaryotic cell contain a true nucleus. Okay? Next, the presence of organelles. For the presence of organelles, for prokaryotic, there is no nucleus. No nucleus. What else? There is also no membrane-bound organelles. There is no membrane-bound organelles. And if we look into the ribosomes or the size of the ribosomes of the prokaryotic cell, it is 70S, meaning that it is smaller compared to the eukaryotic cell. Now for the eukaryotic cell here, there is true nucleus, yes. Okay, it has true nucleus. Okay, there is also membrane-bound organelles. There is membrane-bound organelles. Okay, what else? If we look into the size of the ribosomes, it is larger as to compare to the prokaryotic cell. And that's for the presence of organelles. Now, next one is the process of reproduction. How does the prokaryotic cell reproduce? It reproduces by means of binary fission. Now, if we look into the binary fission, this is a single microorganism or bacteria. Okay, this single bacteria will replicate by 2. So therefore, in your mathematics, in your general mathematics, it simply follows the principle of exponential, the binary fission. Okay? What else? For the chromosome, we have single chromosome. Okay, for our prokaryotic cell. On the other hand, for eukaryotic cell, the process of reproduction is by means of mitosis and meiosis. And for the chromosomes are actually in pair. Chromosomes are in pair. Okay, just like if we look into the pair of chromosomes of the parents' chromosome, 23 plus 23 leading us to have a 46 chromosomes. Now, for the last one, the average size. For the average size of the prokaryotic cell, it is actually smaller, ranging from 1 to 5 micrometer in size. For the eukaryotic cell, they are actually larger, okay, ranging from 10 micrometer to 100 micrometer. Now let's try to give examples. Okay, for prokaryotic cells, since it reproduces by means of binary fission, and if we look into the DNA, the structure of the DNA, it's naked. Okay, there is no introns. A good example for a prokaryotic cell is bacteria. Okay. Now, looking into the structure of bacteria, okay, most of them are actually the organelles. There are absence of organelles and so forth and so on. For the eukaryotic cell, okay, for the example of eukaryotic cell, we have the plants and animal cell. Okay. So, in order for us to differentiate the two submajor classification of the cell, which is the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell, always remember Dora the Explorer. Now, I have here with me the different types of eukaryotic cell. We do have the plants and the animal cell. Now, let's try to look into their difference. The difference between plants and animal cell. Now, to differentiate the plants and animal cell, always remember piso or a 1 peso bill. Why? Because they are actually, or they can be differentiated according to the presence of chloroplast. Okay, the presence of chloroplast. What else? Okay, it is also, or we can also differentiate them according to its dividing mechanism. Its dividing mechanism. Okay? What else? We can also differentiate them according to the size of vacuoles. According to the size of vacuoles. And lastly, we can also differentiate them according to the outer layer, which is the cell wall. Okay? Now, for the plants and animal cell here, for the presence of chloroplast, always remember that plants contain chloroplast. On the other hand, animals doesn't have. So there is absence of chloroplast into the animal cell. Now, for its dividing mechanism, for the dividing mechanism during the cell division, for the plants, okay, formation of cell plate. Formation of cell plate. On the other hand, for animal cell, I should say, okay, its dividing mechanism is farrowing. Okay. Now, for the size of vacuoles for plants, it is larger. And usually, the location is at the center. Okay? Its location is at the center. On the other hand, for animal cell, okay, smaller. The size of the vacuole is smaller, and usually the location is indefinite. So we cannot determine. So it could either be on any part of any part of the cell. Now, for the outer layer, which is the presence of the cell wall, plant cell contain cell wall. On the other hand, animal doesn't have cell wall. Okay, so always remember, for us to differentiate the plants and animal cell, always remember piso, a 1 peso bill coin. So that's it for now. The next part of video will pertain into the different parts and functions of the different organelles into the cell.